The last week, we learned how to start a podcast on Spotify. In fact, how you cannot start a podcast on Spotify. And we also learned about podcast directories. In this week's video, we learn how to actually start a podcast using Anchor. So we'll look at the step-by-step instructions on how to get started with your own podcast on Anchor. Hi, this is Dilip and welcome to TPU TV. I am a blogger, podcaster and affiliate marketer. And if you're new to this channel, then you might want to click the subscribe button and the bell notification so that you stay updated with the latest videos that I release. In this channel, every week I release a video on podcasting tips, how to get started with your podcast, how to run a successful podcast, and some nifty little tips and tricks on running a successful podcast. And if you like the content that I release here every week, then please do give a thumbs up to the video to show me that you've liked the content that I'm releasing. Now on to this week's content, how to start your podcast on Anchor. When you're starting off, it is normal for people to think that they don't want to spend money on getting started, or they want to start with something that has zero expenditure. Now, while that thought is fine because you are just checking or you're doing a dipstick on if this is something that you really want to continue in the long term, ideally, if you're starting off with something like that of podcasting, there will still be some amount of expenditure. Like, for example, the expenditure on buying a good podcasting microphone. Now, that is something that you just cannot avoid. But there are some things that you might just choose to not pay for and go with a free version. Like, for example, podcast hosting. Now, there are a lot of premium podcast hosts out there who provide you a host of features, but you have to pay a monthly charge or a subscription charge to those podcast hosts. But there are also some of these free podcast hosts where you can get started for free. Like, for example, Anchor, Acast, and Hubhopper, of course. So in this video, we are going to look at Anchor and how to get started with Anchor. But my recommended podcast host is Acast, where again, you can start off for free and then upgrade your podcast hosting to a premium version once you're ready to get into it for the long term or for full time. So on Anchor, why should you choose Anchor and why is Anchor a good podcast hosting platform? Now, Anchor is part of Spotify and it gives you a host of features. In fact, pretty much everything that you will need to get started with your podcast. Like, for example, they offer you unlimited podcast hosting. They have a nice little online tool where you can record, edit, and mix and do pretty much everything with your audio. They help you with distributing your podcast to most of these directories. And they also help with monetization, but monetization is not available on all the countries. It is available on a few countries. In India, at least, monetization is not available as of now, as of today when I'm making this video. Now, if you look at that perspective, Anchor is probably one of the best platforms to get started for free because you have pretty much everything to get started with your podcast. And in fact, some support as well. But I would always recommend going in with a premium host if you're really serious about getting started with your podcast and staying in it for the long term. And keep in mind that nothing in this world comes for free. If there is something that is being offered for free, then remember that you are the product. You're not the customer, you are the product. So having said that, let us look at some of the features that Anchor offers you from a podcasting perspective. One of the best things about Anchor is that since Anchor is part of Spotify, you get to see some of these Spotify statistics and have more control over what or some of the data that Spotify makes available just because you are part of Anchor and Anchor is part of Spotify. Now, any which ways, the analytics for Anchor is IAB 2.0 certified, which means that it's reliable statistics. You can rely on them and it is certified by an authority. So you know that you're looking at something that is the right numbers. And that in itself makes Anchor one of the preferred podcast hosting platform. Now, in addition to that, some of the features like, for example, the online recording and editing tool is something that is very easy and simple to operate. And They also offer you a mixing feature where you can use some of the music that is available on Spotify directly on Anchor and mix it with your audio. So these are some things that are extremely good, which if you are going with maybe an offline tool, then you have to put in a little bit of effort to get all of these things done. So from that perspective, I think it's a lot simpler to record and edit your episode. But then I don't recommend using an online tool to record and edit your episode. I would still recommend that you record and edit using a DAW, like for example, Audacity, which is a free tool, or GarageBand if you are on a Mac. But I would recommend using one of these tools to go about editing and recording your episode. Another thing that you might want to keep in mind is that while Anchor offers you unlimited podcast hosting, there is a restriction on the file size that you will be uploading on Anchor. But I don't think that will become a limitation for you, because the file size is about 230 MB, and if you're uploading a normal MP3 file, it won't be anything more than maybe about 10, 15 or maybe even 50 MB. So you don't have to worry about it, but that's a limitation that you might want to keep in mind. The third thing is on the podcast monetization piece. Anchor offers a host of podcast monetization features that are available for podcasters, but from an Indian market perspective, they still don't have the monetization feature available in India. So that is something that you might want to keep in mind. Now that we've spoken about some of these features that are available with Anchor, let's go and see how to get started with your own podcast on Anchor. And when I'm doing it, I'm assuming that you already have your artwork ready, the name of your podcast or the title of your podcast ready, and a description written, because these are three things that we will need when we are getting started with podcasting on Anchor. And if you can record a trailer for your show, then you have everything that is required in order to get started. So I'm hoping that you have all of those things ready. And now let's get over to my desktop and see how you can get started with your podcast on Anchor. So here I am on the dashboard, Anchor dashboard. You can see here there is this button to get started. If you already have a podcast, you can just click on switch to Anchor. I hit get started and it takes me to a page where I can sign up. You need to enter your full name, the email address, and you will have to enter a password. I'll quickly create a secure password. I select the date of birth. Click on I'm not a robot and click on sign up. And that completes the sign up process. In a few seconds, it will redirect me to the dashboard. Here I am on the dashboard. And this is what you'll see if you don't have a podcast. So you'll see these three options: dashboard, episodes, money, and then under settings, you'll be able to see the update settings button. So first of all, you can get started by clicking one of those options. If you have a first episode, you can just click let's do it. But if you want to set up your podcast, click set up your podcast and enter the name of your podcast. Here I'll enter the name as the Daily Motivation Podcast. Enter your podcast description. Then choose a category. You will be able to find a variety of categories here and pick the one that is closest to your topic or your niche. In my case, I think the best one will be maybe to select maybe mental health or something like that in this case. So I'll just select maybe mental health because it's motivational. You can see what suits best. Then select the language, which is English, and click on continue. Now that you are done setting up your podcast, you will see that your podcast is set up. It's a checkbox. Now you can set up monetization. So monetization is not available on India. If you click learn more about monetization, it will tell you what are the options that are available in terms of monetizing. It has a variety of articles that will take you through every aspect of monetizing your podcast. Since we don't have monetization in India, we'll leave it there. You can see here my email is not verified, so I'll have to go into my inbox and verify my email first. Let me quickly do it. Now that I have verified my email, I can proceed. So let me quickly go and click on this button to set up the first episode. Now you can see here, this is where you can create your episode, which means you can record the audio directly in there. You can mix music, you can edit, you can create transitions. So pretty much everything is available on this dashboard, which you can do. But if you already have an episode, all you need to do is just click browse, select the file, and it uploads. You can see here that I have uploaded the audio here. And once the processing is done, you will find a few more options through which you can edit that audio, but that editing feature is not, it doesn't give you a full-fledged editing option. It is only about slicing and cutting the audio file. You can play the audio there if you want. You can play and listen to it if everything is okay. Here it is, the edit audio button. If you click on that, it will take you to a page where you can edit the audio. Basically, it is about slicing, like what I said. So that is the only option that you get. So you can just split the audio wherever you want. That's an option that this gives you. So I'll click cancel here, discard my changes, and then you can see here, this is where you can add background music to the audio. You can see here there are a variety of music options that are available. You can pick whatever suits you, and you can add a smart background music to the audio. And this play button basically plays the episode just so that you can preview it and see how everything is. And that is all that is there. So you just click on save, and it is saving, and your audio is now available. All that you need to do is just go and enter the episode title. Let me quickly enter it. And you can select when you want to publish it. And these are some options that are available on Anchor, which is if your podcast is on Spotify, then you get these additional options by way of which you can add a poll, or you can even add a question. These are options that will help you engage with your listeners. So always exercise this option if your podcast is available on Spotify, and these options will only show up on Spotify, not on the other podcast directories or podcasting platforms. Now here you can upload your cover art, the episode art. This is specific to that particular episode. Let me just quickly upload something here. So I've just uploaded an artwork here that is for my newsletter, but I just wanted to upload something here. You can see here it is saving, and once it is done, you can see that the episode artwork is available here. And you have these options to customize this episode, and then you click, either you can save it as draft, or you can just click on next. It will take you to the page where you can set up your podcast. Because the podcast setup is not complete, what you will want to do is click on the continue button. You need to pick your cover art here now. Let me quickly select a cover art. I'll upload the same image that I used for the episode artwork, and you have your cover art there. Click on continue. You can see here that there is this artwork. You can add some text if you want, and you can do some customization features that are available. That's entirely up to you. And click on update cover art, and your cover art is updated, and your podcast settings are all complete. Now all you need to do is just hit the publish button, and your podcast will be published. It will be available on Anchor and Spotify both, and then you can go about distributing your podcast to some of the other platforms that are available for distribution. So I'll quickly cross this off because I don't want to publish this episode now. Let me quickly show you how the settings work. I'll go here, click on update settings. It will take me to the settings page where you can see everything about the settings about your podcast, the podcast artwork, the details, and then you can see some of the account settings where you can enter the website that this podcast corresponds to. So if you already have a website, just enter the website details here. This is your custom URL. Depending upon your username, it will automatically allot a URL, but you can always change that. So just change that, and you can add all of your social media connections here: Twitter, Instagram, YouTube, Facebook. And if you already have a Spotify account, you can link that account as well. So those are some of the things that are available, and you click save and everything is saved. Now quickly let me go and log out from this account, and I'll show you my account where I already have an episode or podcast hosted, where I have my affiliate marketing simplified podcast. You can see here I have everything that is entered. The account settings also has the website details, all of the connections set up. And this is where, if in case you're leaving Anchor, all that you can do is just enter the redirect URL. That is a RSS feed that you get from your new host. You can enter it there and it redirects. So let me quickly go and show you. This is how you can distribute your podcast. This is basically your RSS feed. You can copy this RSS feed and use it wherever you want to distribute your podcast to. Now there is some automatic distribution that is available. This add email to RSS feed is something that is very important, because especially Apple Podcasts requires your email address to be there in the RSS feed for them to list your podcast in the directories. So just ensure that you're clicking on add so that your email is added to the RSS feed. And now you can see here, these are some of the directories. So my podcast is already submitted, so the URL is there. You can submit to all of these directories. It's pretty easy to submit. If you click on the Apple Podcasts Connect link, it takes you to the dashboard where you can log into your Apple Podcasts dashboard, and you can see all of your statistics and everything. So that's where you simply log in and you'll be able to find the statistics and everything. Similarly, you can submit it to all of the other directories: Google Podcasts, Overcast, Amazon Music, Castbox, Pocket Casts, Radio Public, and Stitcher. So these are some of the directories that are available. This gives you the instructions on how to go about submitting your podcast to the various directories. And if you scroll down, you'll be able to find instructions for every one of these directories. So if you click on that, each link will show you how to go about submitting your podcast to that specific directory. So that is all that is there to starting your podcast on Anchor. It is that simple. The episodes tab will show you all of the episodes. If you click on create a new episode, you can go about creating a new episode, or you can upload an episode if you already have an episode, or if you don't have one, you can simply use a dashboard to record, edit, mix, and create an episode. So that's all that is there to getting started with your podcast on Anchor. So that is it. You saw how simple it is to get started with your own show on Anchor. And you saw the RSS feed that Anchor generates, which is something that you can use to distribute your podcast to most of the podcast directories. Now, something that you want to keep in mind is, if you're following the automatic distribution method that Anchor offers, then your podcast will be registered under Anchor's email address in most cases. So you might want to go into each of those directories and claim your podcast if you want to look at some of these statistics. Specifically from an Apple Podcast perspective, you would want to go and manually submit your podcast to Apple Podcasts so that you have access to all of that statistics, because it's a handy thing to have. You will have a lot of information at your disposal if you have access to the statistics that Apple Podcasts provides. So I would recommend that you go about manually submitting your podcast to Apple Podcast. But otherwise, if you prefer to take the automatic distribution route, you can always do that as well. So that is all that is there to getting started with Anchor, and I hope you enjoyed this simple tutorial video today. If there is something in specific that you would like to learn about podcasting, then you can drop them in the comment section below and I'll create a video specifically for that. Some of my recommended tools for podcasting, you'll be able to find those links in the description box below. If you click on those links and make a purchase, I will earn a small commission from them at no extra cost for you. But I can tell you that those tools that I recommend are all something that I have used and I know works really well, and that is why I recommend it to you. That is all that I have for this episode. The next week, I'll be back again with another podcasting tip. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel, click the bell notification so that you stay updated when I release that video. And if you like this video, don't forget to click the thumbs up button down there so that I can make more such informative videos for you. That is all that I have for this video. I'll be back again the next week. Until then, you all take care.